nephew's daycare teacher fed him peanuts on purpose, even though he's allergic. She didn't expect to get caught red-handed. As soon as I walked into the daycare center to pick up my nephew, I could immediately tell something was catastrophically wrong. His tiny face was covered in angry red hives that spread down his neck and across his arms. His breathing sounded like he was sucking air through a straw, and his eyes were so swollen he could barely open them. The daycare teacher, this woman named Valerie, walked over like nothing was wrong and told me, "Our center isn't responsible for food allergies that weren't managed properly at home." I didn't even respond. I just grabbed him and drove straight to the emergency room where they rushed him back immediately. The doctors confirmed it was a severe allergic reaction and had to keep him overnight for observation because his throat had swollen so badly that they were worried about his airway closing completely. When my brother arrived, he looked like he'd aged 10 years in the drive over. He stood in the doorway of the hospital room staring at his son hooked up to machines and started crying before he even made it to the bed. The nurse came in and asked him questions about the daycare's protocols and whether they'd been trained on his allergy. My brother showed her 4 separate messages he had sent them about the peanut allergy, including photos of the medical documentation from their pediatrician. He'd even had a face-to-face meeting with the director where he'd handed over the EpiPen and watched them lock it in the nurse's office. Around midnight, my nephew finally woke up enough to talk, even though his throat was still so swollen that his voice sounded completely wrong. He kept saying the same thing over and over through his swollen throat. Miss Valerie told me to eat the snack. My brother asked him what snack, and my nephew started crying immediately. He said Miss Valerie had given him a special snack and told him he needed to try new foods because his dad was being too protective. My brother's hands started shaking, and he looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before and said, "She did this on purpose." He stood up and started pacing around the room, and I could see him trying not to completely lose it in front of his son. The nurse left and came back 10 minutes later with her supervisor and a hospital social worker. They told us this was beyond medical negligence and that we needed to file a police report as soon as possible. My brother sat there in shock, and I heard him mumble, "I trusted these people with my son's life and they almost killed him on purpose." The next morning, I drove back to the daycare to confront Valerie. I explained that my nephew had nearly died and I needed to know what happened. She actually laughed. Parents are always overreacting about allergies. Kids need to be exposed to different foods to build tolerance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I went straight to the licensing board office and filed a formal complaint with every detail I could document. The woman at the desk told me they'd investigate, but these things take time. My nephew almost died and they wanted to take their time. My brother was terrified to send my nephew anywhere, so I was staying with him every day. I saw firsthand that he was having nightmares and waking up screaming. He wouldn't eat anything unless my brother tasted it first. That's when I made the decision that I wasn't going to wait anymore. I went back to the daycare and told them I wanted to enroll my nephew again because we decided to give it another shot. They let me in without questions. I snuck in a small hidden camera and set it up in the lunchroom so I could watch what Valerie did. I couldn't believe my eyes when I watched the footage the next day. I watched her take a lunchbox out of the fridge with a note clearly stating peanut allergy. She looked right at another child and said, "You need to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you," and handed her a peanut butter sandwich. When the child started showing signs of a reaction, Valerie told her to sit down and stop being theatrical. I took everything to the police station and filed a report for child endangerment. Then I sent the footage to the state licensing board. Within 2 hours, the police showed up at the daycare with a warrant. She confessed to everything. She said she didn't believe in coddling kids and that allergies were overblown by paranoid parents. She admitted she'd done this to 12 other kids.